that. So, okay, cool. So thanks for having me today and really excited just to be talking with you guys. So maybe just a bit about me. I'm the Vice President of Security Strategy at CyberFox and been at CyberFox for over a year now. And just, man, love what we're doing as a company, helping businesses of all sizes, MSP and individual companies just kind of grow and be able to solve this problem of privilege management, which we're going to talk about today. So you might be using CyberFox. You may be just curious about this whole topic. You may have never heard of us. Any of those things are totally okay. We're going to jump into that. I'm an old school banker. I'm an old school cyber nerd. So I'm not really a salesperson. I just love helping people in their journey in security. Nothing makes me happier. So really excited to be on with you today. So where I want to go is I'm going to start right here. This is one of my favorite things to show when I present at conferences. I'm sorry for all the words. I usually don't use so many words, but I have to because this comes right from Microsoft. So this is from Microsoft's Administrator Accounts Security Planning Guide. So this is an official document that's old that Microsoft wrote. Danielle, I'm going to have you help me since I can't see chat.
Yep.
I'm going to ask, I'm going to read this, but I want you to be thinking and I want you to come back and chat. I want to know what year you guys think this was written. No cheating. Don't go Google it. I just want to know, does anyone want to take a guess at when this was written? Okay, so first of all, what it says is it's talking about, most security related training and documentation talks about this principle of least privilege. Like if you take a college course on least privilege, it's this idea of you should give out the minimum level of access that somebody needs to do their job, but still let them do their job, right? And so what does Microsoft say? They say, we've been talking about this, and organizations rarely follow it. It's a simple procedure, it's a simple process, and it increases your security greatly, but people just don't really follow it. My question for you, and Danielle, if you give me a couple areas of
Mhm.
feedback, what year do y'all think this is written? What do we got so far, Danielle?
We have Jeffrey said 1985, Jonathan 1998, Bill 1990, Dave 2001,
Okay, so pretty much across the board. I love that.
1987.
So the magic winner, this thing was written in 99. Who was closest, Danielle?
Closest, I think it's Jonathan.
All
Or
right.
actually,
Jonathan,
Jonathan.
you got I don't have anything to give you other than West Street cred. So congrats, Jonathan. This thing was written back when NSYNC was the hot band. This is back when they were like the Teen Choice Award winners. This is back when they were VHS or VH1, winners and top of the chart back when like Justin Timberlake had those frosted tips. I still kind of, man, I miss those days. That was like high school for me. I just want you to understand how old that document is. So let's go back to it for a second. So 1995, y'all, 1999, that article was written. Isn't it shocking that we could still have copy pasted that quote right there to the modern age, this idea of principle of least privilege, yet people don't follow it. So it was written last millennia is basically the best way to say it. So my kids always say, Dad, back in the 1900s. And yet here we are today in 2024, and the problem still exists. Isn't that shocking? Let's look at another one. This is another ancient manuscript document from Microsoft, their security resource kit. And this is Microsoft doing what I call theory crafting. This is this idea of them saying, in theory, if an application has a lot of privileges and can do a lot of things, Microsoft is like, in theory, if it were compromised, the bad guy could do way, way more than what we would assume it could do if we had peeled back its privilege. In other words, a better way to say this is sometimes applications, in theory, if they have a lot of power, they're running with like local administrators, a great example of this, and they were to get attacked and the bad guy got access to it, it could do a ton of damage with those privileges. Anyone want to take a guess at when this sucker was written? Give me some feedback. And no cheating, by the way. No going and Googling it. I want to know what year you think this is written. Think this is in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2005, 2010s. What do we have, Danielle?
Not any yet. Oh, here we go. 2004, 2008, 2000, 2001.
Okay. Okay. So this is good, right? So and I agree with you, right? Because people are looking at this thinking, well, this definitely is a little bit more advanced stuff, right? Thinking about taking advantage of applications, exploiting them, using the privileges against us. well, what we see modern day, a lot of attacks involve, right? Come to find out, this sucker was 1995. This is back when Jay Leno joined Bill Gates on stage for the release of Windows 95. I don't know if any of you guys have seen those hilarious gifs of like, Bill on stage and Steve Ballmer, and they're like clapping, and it's so awkward. It's like a total cringe moment. But this, guys, think about this. 1995 was when this was written. So this is old school. So now let's jump into the modern day. So now we're in 2023. Okay. So this was written last year. This is Microsoft's newest, most up to date guidance on privilege. Okay. So now we're in the modern age. And look what they say. They've been talking about this forever. And they say we invariably find excessive numbers of accounts that have been granted rights and permission far beyond those required to perform day-to-day work. In other words, Microsoft is saying this is not a problem that's largely solved, but we just have a smattering of few issues here and there. They basically said we wrote in 1995, what we wrote in 1999 have not been fixed. Decades and decades have gone on, and we still have the problem of excessive numbers of accounts that have been granted way too many rights and privileges than they should have. So Danielle, and you can interrupt me. I want to ask a question. I know this might take a minute or two to come in, but my question for you in the audience, why do you think this is still such a problem? You might say things like, well, the politics of the organization. You might say things like, well, the inertia, it's always been that way. You might say, well, my company doesn't understand and doesn't care about it. You might say, this is the first I've heard of it, so I'm just interested. So Danielle, if you will, I know it might take a minute for them to come in, so you can just interrupt me anytime. I'd love to get some feedback from the audience on why they think this is an issue.
We have laziness. We have company sprawl, lack of compliance or rules and management, pressure from users on able to access everything at once, lack of compliance, adherence, users not understanding.
Man, that's good stuff. I think y'all nailed it. Like it's a myriad of issues, and it might be different from one company to the next, but we still have this as a problem, don't we? So let's shift into a little bit of what Microsoft talks about, and not just Microsoft, right? I'm just using Microsoft because, well, they make the most popular operating system today, and they deal a lot with this and have a lot of configuration around this. But it's beyond just Microsoft, right? So I want to say that. So one of the things that we have to recognize when it comes to bad guys is bad guys are like water. They follow the path of least resistance. Like if you look at this river, I think this is way up in Alaska. So this is like when the tundra, kind of falls a little bit for those few months of the year. Look at this windy river. Isn't that amazing? It's still flowing north to south or southeast, whatever. In fact, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but like it used to even kind of go through here. You can see this right here, and it used to kind of go up through here. And it used to kind of bend through here. Now it doesn't, right? Why does it not? Well, water's very simple. Just the path of least resistance is where it's going to go. Now, why do I say that? Bad guys are the same way. Bad guys follow the path of least resistance. Bad guys are going to say, if you give me an easy opening, I'm going to take it. So often people say things like, well, they're going to go after Bank of America, not my small business. Well, no, they might go after Bank of America, but they're absolutely going to say you're more of a target because you're easier of a target. And so all of those things that you just listed are absolutely true. All of those inhibitions and why we have these issues are problems. And bad guys take advantage of those problems, and they're going to go after the path of least resistance. So in that same 2023 guide that I mentioned, I would encourage you to go and read it. If that, some of you may say, yeah, that sounds like great bedtime reading, put me to sleep in 5 minutes. But some of you may be nerds like me and you want to go read it, right? If you do that, Microsoft talks about two problems that we have when it comes to privilege. They talk about a width problem and they talk about a depth problem. So I want to talk about the width problem first. The width problem is, at the end of the day, they say they say this in all of our research and all of our, when we're dealing with cyber incidents, because they have a whole, they call it DART, their detection automation response team. When they're coming into cyber incidents, they're helping businesses out in the aftermath. They say one of the things we have is a width problem where we have far too many businesses that have granted groups of people more privileges than what they need. Let me give you an example. Your help desk. is the best example of this. How many of you have help desk that can do full password reset, that have full access to every system inside the organization, that can connect in anywhere in the world that they wish, that can set up and install and remove configuration, that can add permissions to users and take them away? Now, I'm not hating on any of that. Like, that's the role of help desk. I get it. What I'm saying, though, is sometimes over the course of years and years and years, we only add to the permissions of users and we never take away. We only add to the capabilities of software and what it can do in the network, and we never peel it away. That's the first problem that Microsoft talks about. What about the second problem, the depth problem? I'm using like a black hole here for this, right? We also have a depth problem. What they say is we also find problems where there's individual users who, over the course of their tenure in the organization, have been given far more access than what they need as an individual. Let me give you a great example of this. I'm going to give you two examples. One is the CFO, right? I worked for a CFO at my bank, and he just wanted access to everything. You know, he said, well, I'm the CFO, and when I have to run this financial report for my bank, I need access to these systems. And if I have to wait, then it's costing the company money. So we can't. And so, you know, over the years, especially when I came in, I'm like, well, why does he have access to that and that and that and that and that? Because he barks if he doesn't get it. I'm like, oh, got it. Well, that's a problem, right? We can't. I'm sorry he barks. Let's have a conversation about this and have a better approach to it. A second example is think about here. A great example here from our a lot of our CyberFox customers and partners is take engineering firms. Great example of this is SolidWorks. So SolidWorks requires local admin to run. And so at the end of the day, what do? We give our engineers who are not cybersecurity people full access to their computers, full local admin access. They can install, they can remove, they can connect, they can delete, they can do anything they need. And the reason for it is because only SolidWorks. If we rip away local admin from them and they need to install something or even run SolidWorks, they can't do it. So what do? They yell at us and they say, you need to get SolidWorks going on my machine. Because if you don't, then you're costing the company money because I'm not running and I'm not billable. I get it. They're not wrong. But SolidWorks has put us in this position where what do? We knee jerk and we say, well, then just have every access to the machine because I don't know what else to do. So this is the problem Microsoft is talking about. We have a width problem. We have a depth problem. Danielle, anything that's come in, any comments or questions?
Yeah, so we have a few. They people have been saying, you know, that I am help desk. I need that access. How can I work without it? Couple people for sure on there. And then also Mark mentioned, he goes, best line ever. Bad guys are like water, follow the path of least resistance. Get me that t-shirt.
Deal. Mark, we'll have to make that shirt just for you, my friend. Yeah, and the person that made the help desk comment, well, you're right. You're absolutely right. You need access to those things, don't you? I mean, you can't operate without those abilities, right? So no one's saying, well, help desk shouldn't be able to be operational. The question is, how do we develop and deploy and give those capabilities to our folks when they need it and not when they don't, right? That's the question. And that's what we're going to start talking about today. And I love that person asked that question, Danielle, because that really sets up what we're talking about, what this idea of privilege management is not that we don't want people to have the privileges to do what they need, but that we want them to have it from a least privilege when they need it at the time of need and not when they don't. So excellent, excellent question. I love that person even sort of shifted into it. So let's go back to that guide again from Microsoft, right? And I'm going to move away from this in a minute. I'm just setting you up for like, this is why we have such a cybersecurity problem today. So one of the things Microsoft says in that same guide is they say, you know, this whole idea of broad and deep problems of, you know, like groups having too much access and individuals, they say, look at what they say. They say neither depth nor width is necessarily dangerous. But look what I haven't read. But when many accounts are permanently granted broad and deep access, if only one is compromised, it can be used to reconfigure the attackers to the attacker's purpose. You see the problem with this? Microsoft saying there's grace. There's room for having some of these controls, but we have a lot of them and they're permanently granted this way. We're just opening the door for the bad guy. We're just making it easy for them. We're just like, Once you get in, it's all here for you. I know many pen testers, what we call penetration tests, like people that actually they act like a bad guy for good guys. That's what we say. Many of you know who those are. And they'll tell you over and over and over, if I can just get into the organization, I got access to everything from there. I'll find my way in. Um, and there's tools that will do that for you. They let you literally search through a network. Like there's one, if you're technical today, called Bloodhound, that let you look through and see, oh, there's an account I can go and attack, and boom, it's so easy because this problem right here. And here's Danielle, what I think is so amazing. We're in 2024 now. We have all of these hot vendors that are talking about AI this and stopping threats before they happen and blah, 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 blah. And yet we still have a problem back from the 90s. We still haven't solved for this. No matter what you put in place, Microsoft is clearly showing if we're not dealing with our privilege problems in the organization, put all this fancy stuff in, you buy all these cool things, but we're just saying to a bad guy, just got a door you got to get through. Second you get through it, it's all easy from there. And that's a problem. And that's what we need to talk about. And here's the data that proves that we have a problem, my friends. This comes from Verizon. Every single year, Verizon produces, it's a free report. I encourage you to go read it, called the DBIR, the Data Breach Incident Response Report. And look what they show. One of the things that they have is sort of like a means or a ways in is what this is. And what they're looking at is how do bad guys, when we look at exploit, how do they initially get into the organization? And wouldn't you know it, the vast majority of ways in, the way they first get a foothold is credentials. Your credentials into your network, your credentials into the machine, your credentials into the cloud. Now, why is that important? Here's why it's important. The data shows the bad guys are saying this: if I can get credentials in, I have everything I need. Because privilege, going back to this, because this is such a problem, the bad guys, they just give me credentials and I'll do the rest from there. All I need is a foothold. All I need is a way in, and that's how I can get started. And this is why, going back to the rise of credentials, and look at how it's had a meteoric rise from 2017 onward. Credentials have ramped up. This is what bad guys are wanting. They're just saying to us, give me access to the machine and I'll do the rest. I'll find a way in because we've got so many privilege problems. I'll find a way to get access to the network. I'll find a way to get admin. I'll find a way to encrypt all your files, and I'll find a way to make a lot of money. That's the problem we have. So what's my point? We have a wolf in sheep's clothing problem that exists. And what I mean by that is not your employee. I am not saying that you as the employee are the risk. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that when bad guys get access into your network, they leverage your credentials against you. So you're this harmless, nice sheep with all this capability. The bad guy assumed your control and assumed your ability and assumed your privileges and leverages those against you. So, a good example of this is if I can connect in and I've got access to help desk, for example, and you have a help desk that has permanently granted access to remote to any machine that can get local admin, I can very easily use that to run ransomware everywhere. Trivial. Doesn't even take a lot of skill to do it. Danielle, any questions or comments have come in so far?
No questions yet, but I see a few. Looks like Mark, he said that he's downloading the report that you mentioned now.
Good.
He said that users are the weakest link, so managing them better or monitor and block them better. Ernesto said we cannot forget to mention poorly written applications.
Yes. Good stuff. Anything else? Was that it? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Nope,
you.
no, you're good. Good. Nope, those are the main ones.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and Ernesto, great point, right? Applications don't help, they hurt in the sense that, again, a ways in, I'll go back to this for a minute because he makes such a great point. Exploit vulnerability, even though it shows about 7% or 8% or so, is also a means in. And then once they have access in through that exploit, again, they use credentials and they go and get those credentials and they use them to get access to everything. So you're exactly right. Those don't help either. So that's why vulnerability management is so important and all these other things we do. You nailed it. You nailed it. So when we look at privilege escalation types of attacks, and this goes right to what Ernesto you just said, Exploit configuration are a huge part of this. Bad guys say, if I can exploit your whatever it is, your web server, we've seen plenty of exploits in the past, like Log4j and all these big things that have happened. That is a way in for us. We can establish a foothold that way. Bugs that exist in the system. Sometimes we just have software that's not necessarily an exploit, but some kind of bug that lets us take advantage of the machine. And maybe it spits out a bunch of data that I'm actually able to use and use that to get access and more knowledge to get a foothold. Weak passwords have been a problem forever. I know many of you are like, yeah, that's mitigated because I have multi-factor in place. Kinda. Like hear me, multi-factor is critically important. You can't get cyber insurance without having multi-factor. You must have multi-factor. Like you have to. But bad guys are finding ways to bypass MFA. And we're not really talking about a lot of that today, but especially a lot of session hijacking is a way that they bypass MFA. Just Google up it, session hijacking, and just system vulnerabilities that exist across the board. So my point is, all of these things that we've been dealing with in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010, 2020s, we're guys, we've gone decades and decades and decades, and we still have the same problems we have today. It's staggering to me, right? You look at all the breach data, like you combine them all together. Roughly 90% of breaches, roughly of these breaches are they exist because somewhere in that attack cycle, bad guys went after privileged access. They got access to an account that had privileged information. How do I know that? Here's how I know that. Because you straight up can't encrypt machines without privilege. If you don't have local admin on a Windows box, you're not going to be able to run encryption. You're not going to be encrypt files. So ransomware by default requires some amount of ability to do what we call privilege escalation. The ability for us to say, how do I get deep enough access into not just one machine, but all machines in the network, to where now I can encrypt all those machines and then hold you hostage for ransom. Wouldn't you know it? If we get rid of local admin, 94% of these Microsoft vulnerabilities that we're pesky and we're dealing with go away. Why? Because local admin was designed to do administrative tasks, and that's it. And so that's why a lot of these vulnerabilities that we deal with, if we can rip away local admin, and again, this is not me pitching to you like buy a local like that. No, we're just the study data shows local admin is a major problem. And if we can peel away local admin and only give it when we need it to do things like software updates, installation, configuration changes, all the things help us need it for, but then rip it away when we don't need it, it's a huge, huge advantage. And this is what we're talking about. Now, don't take my word for it, right? So I'm a security guy. So the first thing I'm going to say, if I'm listening to Wes, I'm going to say, well, prove it, Wes. How do we know that's important? How do we know that that matters? Well, take it right from here. So these are security frameworks. Danielle, I want to know, yes or no, is anyone aware of the CIS controls, the Center for Internet Security, and is anyone using them in their organization today? So give me a yes, we know about it, and yes, we use it, or yes, we know about it. No, we're not using it. I'd love to get some feedback from you guys because I'm going to unpack some CIS controls here because it's just that important to see. Like even CIS really talks about the importance of this stuff. So what do we got, Danielle? What kind of feedback do we have?
We have a few yeses. We have first time hearing about it. We have yes, I know about it, but we are not using it. Yes and no. Yes, leverage controls and custom assessments. Yes and no. So I believe they're saying that they've heard it, but may not necessarily be using it. Yes,
Okay.
we know about it and are working to implement internally and ultimately customer base wide. Yeah, heard of it, working on implementing, using a software solution to do global inventory and applying the controls.
Great. Great. So I love that. So, and that's really encompasses what I hear from folks is, yep, we're aware of it and we're using it, or we're aware of it and we're not, but we know about it. We want to, right? So just 10 seconds, CIS nonprofit. I actually know all the CIS folks. Phyllis Lee is a good friend of mine. She was the director of the CIS controls until just recently she got promoted up. And it's a series of 18 controls and they have sub controls under them. And it's sort of CIS's way of saying, like, look, no matter what kind of industry you are, you follow these 18 controls and it's going to boost your security. It's got 3 groups of implementations, 1, 2, and 3. 1 is basic, 2 is sort of intermediate, 3 is advanced. I encourage all organizations to at least get through CIS control 1, at least. Okay, so that said, here is a couple things around CIS. So control 4, One of the things control four, if you break down 4.7, which is one of those subcontrols, what do they talk about? Disabling default accounts. I wonder how many of us do that, right? Some of us probably do a good job of it, but we don't have it purely built out into process continuously. So that's one thing. Another thing is account management. So they talk about the very first area of control five is what they call an inventory of all your accounts. And you might say, well, why do I need an inventory? Well, it's because an inventory is going to reveal to us not just all of our accounts, but whether they're an administrator or not. And it lets us review and say, well, why does Bobby Joe need access to this system? Oh, you know what? He used to. And now he's in a new role. He doesn't need that anymore. Oh, we should probably go and remove that principal of least privilege, right? So that's what they talk about. You see, I have it in bold here, validating that all active accounts are authorized. So you might also say, well, why does Sarah Sue have access to our VPN? Oh, because she's no longer working for us anymore. She left last month. Oh, we need to disable that account. See how this works? So this idea of privilege and account management is really important. Let's jump in even further. You look at control five on account management. We're talking about things like unique passwords for enterprise assets. The way we do that is we use password managers. By the way, at CyberFox, we have an awesome one. Y'all have got to check it out. It's called Password Boss. Come look at what we're doing. It's super awesome. It's affordable, and you're gonna love it. So that whole idea of unique passwords, long passwords, MFA, all that good stuff. Check out what we're doing with Password Boss. It's awesome. Now look at 5.4, restricting administrative privileges to dedicated administrator accounts. So that's sort of this idea of we should have a regular user account and a super user account. That's like the minimum. But the problem with that is still this. What happens if a bad guy gets access to that privileged account? So I talk to businesses all the time. They're like, well, we're doing 5.4. I'm like, cool. I'm glad you're doing 5.4. I'm glad you have a secondary account. But what happens if a bad guy gets access to the secondary account? Why don't always log into it? They don't have to. They can use a previous login and do something called pass the hash. Go Google that if you haven't seen of that. A lot of these penetration testers use this. So it's not just about a secondary account. And at some point, CIS is going to update 5.4 and to say, rather than having a regular account and a super account, the idea is only a regular account. And then we grant permissions to that account when it needs it and then immediately rip it away. That's where we need to start going. Okay. And then 5.5, establishing inventory. So then we get into control six. And I'm sorry I'm giving you so much. We'll give you the slides if you ask us, and you're welcome to store these and review them and watch the recording and share it with your team. We want you to do all that, right? But we also help in control six. When you're talking about privilege management, dealing with privilege management gets into control six too. For sake of time, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but privilege matters here too. So like the processes for how do we give access? How do we revoke? How do we automate some of those kind of things? How do we do it for new hires and for changing a user's role from one area of the organization to another? So all of these things are here too. So you can go back and read this later. So my point to all of these is that I just want you to see good security principles, good security hygiene as demonstrated by CIS is important. It's important that we follow and do the right things, that we have a minimum defensible standard. And this privilege stuff, security talks about this. Good security talks about dealing with privilege. And it's not just CIS. You look at a lot of the industry control frameworks, and again, way outside today's discussion, but PCI, for anyone that deals with payment systems, HIPAA compliant deals with this. FFIEC, I come out of banking, I'm well aware of this. So any of the banking folks, the new things around FTC safeguards. So here's the thing, friends, like even industry standards and industry-based regulation talks about privilege management and talks about least privilege and talks about you've got to have a process for this. So this is something that exists everywhere. And it's one of those things that we don't always want to talk about because a lot of times vendors want us to run to the shiny tool and get the amazing thing. And it's less about that and more about doing the right thing. Here's another one, cyber insurance. So I'm really close with, there's a great insurance company called Fifth Wall Solutions. And I reached out to Fifth Wall and I said, hey, at CyberFox, we're getting more and more and more folks coming to us saying, look, we've got to solve this because our cyber insurance is requiring it. Are you seeing the same thing? And they said, absolutely. cyber or Fifth Wall works with about 50, 60 different cyber carriers, to my knowledge. And so I asked him, I said, would you get me a couple of the applications that are talking about privilege management and how we're dealing with it? And can I just get some screenshots? So they sent me, these are one, two, three, four, five. These are five different carriers they sent me that are all asking for this. So look at the first one. Do you manage your privileged account using some kind of tool like CyberArk or Beyond Trust, or for us, CyberFox, right? Do you see the number 12 of it? Do you have a process for managing computer accounts, including the removal of outdated access? You see this other one. Do you have access control procedures that control access to this information? You see that one that's a little bit bigger. I guess I can use my mouse here. Do you have a formal identity and access management program in place? How many privileged users do you have? A lot of companies are like, I have no idea how many privileged users I have. I love that they're asking what's the number, because it assumes that you know how to get to the number, right? How many of them, look at this, right according to what Microsoft said, how many of them have, you see this? Persistent administrative access to workstations and servers other than their own. Ooh, so I'm like, okay, well, my help desk as a local admin, wherever they go, a lot. You see how this works? What's the total number of users that have administrative access? A lot of organizations, it might be, well, we have 50 employees and we give them all administrative access, so 50, 100%. So you see how this is a problem? Have you disabled all local administrator accounts? So why am I showing this to you? Here's why. If the cyber carriers who are paying out in all these incidents and who have all the research data to what causes these incidents, if they're now asking these questions, they're zoning in. They're starting to say, you know what? We need to start understanding how many of these people, how many of these companies we're working with that we're insuring are doing the right things. This makes sense? Same thing like a car, right? Like it's going to be hard to find insurance on a car if you're a 15-year-old kid that's driving a car with no airbags and drives 100 miles an hour everywhere he goes. You're not insurable because you're not doing the right things. Same thing here. If you don't have good privilege management, the carriers are zooming into this and saying this is kind of important, and it could have stopped a lot of incidents that we paid out on. So this is why I'm showing you these. And no, people ask occasionally, can you tell me what carriers? I'm not allowed to. But just know carriers are waking up to this. And many of you have had carriers ask this. So maybe Danielle, another question, if I may ask it, does anyone in the audience today, have you had cyber insurance that is now starting to ask about these types of questions? Anyone have any yeses here? Would love to know. And would love to know even feedback of like, that's maybe why we're on this webinar, is our cyber carrier starting to ask this stuff. And we're trying to figure it out. So I'd love to get any feedback. Danielle, anything coming in?
Yeah, we have yes, internal and clients.
Boom.
Someone else said no.
Yeah. So and that's normal, right? You have a lot of yeses. And that sounds like an IT provider, MSP, a friend of ours that said, yeah, our clients are getting it too, right? And then some are no's, right? Some carriers are not yet asking for it. So it's starting to become a trend and you want to be in front of this. I know any other comments come in, Danielle?
Yep, we have yes, we have a global company, and yep, trying to figure the different global cyber insurance per country. We have yes, but not questions on numbers of accounts, etc. Yes, and clients.
Okay. So there you have it, right? So it's not 100%, but it's becoming that way. My friends, one thing I know about the carriers, they all like to do the same thing. If we have started this preponderance of more and more carriers asking for it, get ready, right? It's becoming a big deal. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit, let's zoom into how the mind of an attacker thinks, okay? So there's this thing called the kill chain. It was developed by Lockheed Martin, the guys that make all like the jets and, all the cool stuff that we use in military and those things. So Lockheed Martin a while back developed what they called the cyber kill chain. And I want to talk about that for a minute. The cyber kill chain you have to understand the way that these hacks work, like ransomware in particular. It's not like push button get ransomware. A lot of people misunderstand this. They think, I don't know if I'm a geek from I love the old 80s and 90s like computer and hacker movies. I don't know if anyone saw the movie The Net with Sandra Bullock, great movie. Not like reality at all. But at the very end of the movie, she's got the virus that she's got to upload, and she sticks the disk in the machine and it's like virus and it's like uploading, and boom. And that's sort of like the climax and end of the movie, right? She gets the virus uploaded, boom, everything bad happens. It's not like that in this real world. The way this real world works is bad guys have to do some work. And that's a huge advantage to us, by the way, because we have the opportunity to defend ourselves while bad guys are trying to get access and do nasty things. So what does it take? Bad guys have to get a foothold first. Remember, we said privileges are like the number one thing they're after. So they need to get a foothold. They can't do anything if they don't have a foothold into your network. So they just need a starting access point. Then what's the next thing that happens? They move into this escalate privileges where they say, okay, now I have a foothold. Now I need administrator privileges. Because if I get administrator privileges, now I can start reconfiguring things to my ability. I can start letting myself move into this next stage of moving throughout your network. So now I'm not just on a single computer, but now I'm branching off into everywhere in your network. And I'm using those privileges to do it. So then they move laterally. They get access to all machines and they get access to administrative level of all machines, usually using Active Directory to do those kinds of things. And then they wreak havoc. That's when they push the ransomware button. They don't want to encrypt one machine, they want to encrypt all your machine. And that's how it works. Those are the big 4 steps. So when we think about defending these, what do? First of all, we need to have a way to address compromised passwords. If you're not aware of when you have passwords that are compromised, you need to talk to us. We do a lot of this around Password Boss. Then privileged access. If we can prevent them from ever getting that foothold, we're a much better position to make it more difficult because they can't move into here. Then the next thing, escalating privileges. How do we defend against that? We've got to stop having local admins running around. CIS talks about that. All good security frameworks talk about getting rid of local admin. Not saying it shouldn't exist. It should only exist when you need it, and then it's gone. You need some kind of privilege management solution to help you with that. Most businesses, there's no way that your help desk can support all of the installs and updates and changes in the network. Can't do it. Then we need to think about how do we stop them from moving laterally? How can we see that happening? So this is where things like EDRs, if you've ever heard of endpoint detection response, a number of other tools are valuable here. Okay. So when we think about stopping the cyber kill chain, hear me when I say it's not, you don't buy one tool and you stop it. You put a lot of process in place. You put a lot of governance in place. You have a number of tools that do help you with these things. That's how you start addressing this. You might even do some things way above, even over here, like security awareness training and things like that. So I want to show this to you because it's really valuable for us to understand how we start defending against this. It's a multi-pronged approach to dealing with this. Okay. So when you look at how Microsoft looks at this, and their whole idea is here's kind of the way a modern network works. The A is not attacker, the A is admin. So you have a lot of like regular users in the network, but then we all know there's some people with admin. Help desk folks have admin, maybe certain managers have admin, maybe certain groups like engineers that have their legacy software requires local admins. You always have a few local admins, right? And that's kind of the problem. And what Microsoft talks about is what we really want to do is identify those admin accounts. And we really want to move those to standard access, right? We really want to get to the point where literally nobody has default admin access because that's the target. If there's even one of those red admins, that's who the bad guy's going to. That's their first step in this journey. So, but here's the problem with that. And I fully well know what you're thinking. Wes, that's great in theory. But if I'm to rip away local admin, within minutes, I'm going to get people screaming at me. And I get it, right? So here's what happens all the time. We say, I hear the good security practice. I know it's important. I know cyber insurance wants it. I know good my industry controls require. I get it. So I'm going to remove it. What happens? The end user is like, yo, I can't do work anymore. What's going on, IT folks? Give it back to me. And so they complain, they bark, they send in a ticket, whatever it is. And we go, oh, yeah, that didn't work. And we don't want mad users because we want to serve them. So what do? We give local admin back. We usually say something like, yeah, Google must have blipped, probably DNS. Try it again. And we just act, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's working again. We're like, I don't know what happened. That's usually how it goes, right? And we're back to the same circle. Security suffers. We haven't done anything better. This is the cycle. And many of you have probably been in this cycle before. Many of you have probably dealt with it. We need a balance. It needs to not be like that. So here's the balance. If we give them too much access and we have local admin running everywhere, then what happens? You're going to have an incident. Once a bad guy's in your network, they're going to leverage that against you. On the other hand, I get it. Even as a security guy, the business must run. The business must make money. Security people cannot get in front of the company and prevent them from making money. So we can't have so much restriction. We're like, well, ripping out local admin, you got to wait till I have time and an hour and a half to go deal with it. That's not acceptable. I know it's not in today's day. So how do we find the balance? That's the question. The problem that we have today is this is where most of us are at. We're in the too much access problem. I love this. Many of you are probably chuckling on your screen at home. You look at this, what happens? This little guard gate that goes down. And what do we see? Everyone's like, fine, I'll just drive right around it. It's like, what's the point of this little guard gate? It is absolutely worthless. And a lot of times when we put basic security in and everyone has local admin, this is what we're doing. It's literally bypassable. It's so simple to get around. And by the way, who's doing this to get around? Probably not people robbing your company. This is probably your own employees that need to get work done. So they're not trying to be malicious. They just need to run. They need to do what they need to do. And I'm a fan of memery, if I may. So what have we done about this? Well, Windows recognizes this. And what did Microsoft put in place? This UAC thing, right? So Microsoft's like, you know what? We're going to bifurcate this process and we're going to stop this with UAC. And so what happens? You have to install software. What happens? You all know this is the truth. We double click to install or double click to open, double click to whatever it is we need to do. And all of a sudden UAC pops up, right? And it's like, well, what are we going to do about that? And the idea of UAC was brilliant in its theory and terrible in its reaction. Because what happened? The idea behind UAC was sort of this idea of, well, you know what? Before we grant that administrative token, I bet our users are going to stop and they're going to think and they're going to research and they're going to be really careful. Nope. What do? Just click past it. And you know that's true because I know that's true. I am also guilty of this. Every time UAC comes up, just push yes. There have been times I've just pushed yes and I haven't even thought about why I did it. I'm like, wait, what did I just do? It's like we're Pavlov up in here. It's like what's this guy's name? Thanos or whatever, just snapping the big finger. So we have UAC. The problem is, it's not UAC itself. It's the fact that you just click past it every time. So we can't rely on UAC by its default standard. So this is the problem that we have today. We have local admin everywhere. We're not doing a good job with this. The sprawl makes us feel like I can never get through this, and I know I can't just remove local admin. It's insurmountable. So how do we solve this? Okay, so now I want to shift into like, here's how you solve this problem. Now I'm going to tell you straight up, we help solve this problem. This is what we do at CyberFox. And I implore you to go solve this problem. Sure, we have competitors. But I'm telling you, you got to solve this problem. And we are here to help you with it. We've helped thousands of people solve this problem. Okay, so first of all, every IT team that's out there, we know that we have an admin account. We know we can do nasty things with it. We know users have local admin. We know it's like Oprah up in here, right? Like you're an admin, you're an admin, you're an admin, everyone's got an admin. Look into your chair today, you've got admin, right? We know that that's the problem. We got to solve for that. So sometimes what we do is it's kind of like Lord of the Rings up in here, right? Like we get one admin account and everyone shares it. And that's dangerous, right? Because we put that password in the password manager and everyone can go and see it, but it's never disabled. And so again, like I said before, that's the first thing bad guys look for. They look for a previous login and they go after it. So what do we do about that? How do we solve for that? Here's how we get out of that nasty problem or pain that we're in. And then I'd love to answer any questions that you may have. There's 3 steps to this problem. First of all, we centralize. In all things in security, I cannot secure and I cannot control what I have not centralized. Okay? Hear me, this is really important. In all things in security, I can only control what I can centralize. So first of all, it is easy to rip privileges away. But before we do that, we want to centralize. We want to say, how do I see all of this together? Remember how CIS controls talked about an inventory so we can start to see everything? So first of all, we centralize all this together. I'll show you in a minute how CyberFox does that. Then we go into an audit mode. So before we start making changes and making everyone ticked off at us, what we do instead is we audit. We say, let's look and see. Why do we have this? Why is that way? Why does this software need this? Why does that user need that? Now this is going to take, for small companies, a few hours, not long. For really big companies, might take, I don't know, a day or 2 or 3. It's not, believe it or not, it is not the most difficult thing. You might be thinking, oh, this audit is going to take like months. Not the way we do it at CyberFox. Pretty easy. So this is going to take a little bit of time, a few hours for you to do this. And then, and only then, you move into an enforceable process. where it's what we call role specific and policy based. So you can do things like, well, this group of users, maybe our engineers, they can run SolidWorks and they can get local admin to install and update SolidWorks. And that's it. And only when they need it. And as soon as they've run SolidWorks and updated it, we revoke it. So you can do role specific approaches and you can do policy specific approaches. We have policy that allows people to update their own computers, as an example. And so we're going to allow that and we're going to grant them the privileges to do it and then we're going to revoke it away. So really easy to do that. And so the way that I really want to talk about this, you're like, why do you have a cake? And now I'm hungry. A lot of times when we think about all this, we think about the difficulty of making all of this work, and we think about the challenges of how hard this is going to be. And really what, when you think about a cake for a minute, when you eat a great piece of cake, how often you're like, what are the ingredients? How did I do this? And how did you make it? No, you just want a great piece of cake. At the end of the day, your end users, they don't care about everything I talked about. They just want the cake. They want the great experience. They want to install SolidWorks and go. They want to not have to put in a ticket with you and wait for you to have to come install something for them. They just want great experience. That's all they're looking for. Same thing with like a menu. We don't ask for all the things on the menu. We just want it done for us, right? And so here's how I think you address this, and here's how you think you deal with this. When it goes back to this setup, what you want your folks to know is we're putting in a process that's going to do the right things for security, that's going to give us access to see what's wrong, to build a policy for this, to build, how we want this to look. And then we're going to push this through. And you might have a time or two where something doesn't work right. We'll fix it and we'll fix it permanently. And you'll never have this problem again. And we get what we need in security by securing the company, and you get what you need by you can install and do what you need to do without a lot of inhibitions to the company. And everyone wins. We get the chocolate cake, right? That's how you get through this problem. I'm going to skip by a couple of these things, and I just want to jump over to how we work. So we have at CyberFox an awesome tool that does this. It's called Auto Elevate, and it's extremely modern. It takes with an agent-based approach, and the agent is super lightweight. We're talking like 2 megs, like extremely small, basically no impact to the machine at all. And the way it works, because if you're technical today, the way it works is we get in, remember we talked about UAC? We get in front of UAC before it runs and we say, wait, before we let this admin thing happen, let's go look in the CyberFox policy. And we say, oh, is SolidWorks allowed to do this? Cool. Then we're going to allow it. We grant the token to UAC. We let that activity happen and we rip it away. Super cool. Let's say that it doesn't, we have no policy for it. And we've never seen this software work before ever. Well, we're going to get in front of it and say, well, we've never seen this before. It might be malicious. And so you as an admin are going to be notified, and the user gets a little pop-up that says, hold on, we're evaluating this. And it will go over. It can go to your watch. It can go to your phone. It can go to email. It can go to your ticketing system, whatever. And it gives you a chance to review this and say, oh, yeah, that's super okay. It looks like a new version of XYZ software. We know it. We looked at the certificate that is code signed by, good to go. Good. And once you approve it, you can approve it once, you can approve it permanently, or you can block it. It's really powerful. We'll give you a ton of information around it to make a good decision. And once you do that, we're good, right? So it's really powerful. Also, the admin mode, I should talk about that as well. We have a super cool admin mode that if you're an admin listening to this today, we do this little thing where you can jump into what we call admin mode. It gives you a little QR code that you scan on your phone with our app, and it automatically knows who you are since it's multi-factor, and it grants you local admin on that box, and you do anything you need on that computer while you debug them. Literally anything, full admin access, full local admin. And the second you're out, it revokes all of those privileges and takes them away. That way, when you log out of that machine, you don't have to worry, oh, did I revoke myself? Did I get rid of those privileges? Boom, we just do it automatically. It is extremely powerful. We now have thousands of customers. They're super happy because the approach we have to it is easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort. And it is a great approach to the way we do privilege management. So I just want to share that with you and say, if you're looking to solve this problem, we do it elegantly, we do it simply, and we do it powerfully. We have a bunch of other features that we just don't have time to talk about today. One of those is our auto blocker. We just put another layer of security on top of it, and we stop the 95% of the bad things, like the nefarious things like in PowerShell and other stuff the bad guys use. We rip away those privileges in really cool ways. So we'd love to get on and show you a demo of what we're doing. We'd love to show you how powerful it is. But Danielle, that's about what I got, and just would love for folks to reach out and see what we're building up at Auto Elevate, because I think you come away just really, really, really surprised at how elegant the solution really is.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions as well, feel free. I mean, if you want to open that up, we have about 5 minutes left and can answer any questions.
Cool. Yep. It looks like Mark wants us to send some coffee and cake. I love that. A couple questions I'm seeing now that I can see the comments again. So William's asking, how does this work in conjunction with ThreatLocker, right? So ThreatLocker's approach is a little bit different, right? So they're kind of two sides of the same coin. ThreatLocker's approach to this is they want you to go through every single application in the history of the machine and make one-off decisions. It's really powerful the way ThreatLocker does it, but we come against so many folks that say the burden to scale and the burden to keep ThreatLocker going is ridiculously expensive. I have multiple companies I know that have tried ThreatLocker and like, it's awesome, it's great, but we have one or two dedicated full-time FTEs dedicated to the platform. Like, yikes, that's crazy. CyberFox's approach, we require zero FTEs. Someone's has to own it, right? And your help desk is a team who can manage it, but it doesn't require constant, do this, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay. We go by policy and privilege, and our approach to it is a lot simpler. And you'll see that in a demo. So very much, we see a lot of folks that come away from ThreatLocker saying it's a great tool, but I just can't afford it. Not because it's too expensive, which it is expensive, but just because the burden to scale it is ridiculous. So that's the number one thing we hear about that. Andrew checking in, enjoys the just-in-time admin feature. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. So yeah, that just-in-time, right when your techs need it, that's the game changer, because it gives you access to everything you need right when you need it, and that's it. Ernesto, thank you. Auto Elevate works as designed. We're about to roll it out to our entire client base. Rocket. Love that. We need to send him some cake, Miguel.
It looks like Jeffrey had a question in the Q&A.
Oh, did I miss it? Cool. You want to
Yeah.
read it for me?
Yes, we have 2 questions from Jeffrey. How long does Auto Elevate audit each endpoint installed applications and verify which was legitimate? And the second one is, with the just-in-time admin feature, does it completely remove the local admin on endpoints?
Great point. So couple things. We'll dive in more in a demo with this so you can see it more technical, but high level, the way Auto Elevate does the audit is we actually pull, when we're looking at it, we do a ton of stuff. So we're going to pull the file hash, we're going to pull the code signing, the authority of the code sign, which we look at all that stuff. So we can say, this is genuinely signed by Microsoft. We can say, this is the file hash that it belongs to. So we give you a ton of rich information that we pull out of the application and present to you. So it lets you really make that decision. What's really cool about it is you could say, for example, just that file hash is allowed, or you could say anything signed by Microsoft is allowed, or you could say only things by Microsoft signed this year are allowed. Like, it's really cool how it works. But we pull all of that out of the application itself and present it to you, so you know exactly what you're looking at. And that way, if it's signed, it says it's by Microsoft, but it's by, some Ukrainian name, you probably gonna be like, yeah, that's not legit. We're pulling that away, right? So really, really powerful. The just-in-time feature, yes, to answer that question, it does completely remove local admin so it gives it when you need it, and then it rips it away. And we can kind of show you more in a demo how that works. But yeah, is there a CyberFox merch store, Danielle? Only you can answer that. Keep your
So
brain.
not at the moment, but I don't know if Andrew, I don't know if you guys, if you go to events and such, where you always have some swag with us, we're all over the place. So if you click on our website, it tells exactly where we're gonna be at next for all of our different events. We're at a lot of places.
Yep, cool. Jeffrey asked one other question. Child processes their spawn from it. That's a great question. Let's ask an engineer that question. I'm going to hold off on that one because I don't want to improperly answer that one, Jeffrey. On how that works on like child processes that get spun up. I don't know the answer to that, so we'll have to ask an engineer on that question. But great one.
Awesome. I see Jordan said, just met them at RoarCon. Oh, awesome, Jordan. Great in-person team. I can confirm on the swag. Awesome.
Indeed so. Cool. Well, I know you put a link in there, cyberfox.com. Demos they don't take long, right, Danielle? They're pretty short and easy to jump into.
20-ish minutes. Not long at all.
So if you can commit 20 minutes, which you know you can, we'd love to show you what we're doing, how powerful it is. Yeah, and I think you'll see the value for sure.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys for joining, and thank you, Wes. And we'll be sharing this recording out with everybody. You can find it on LinkedIn as well. So if you're following us on LinkedIn, you should see it on there. If you're not, hit a follow, and that way you'll see it as well. So thanks again for joining, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Thanks much.